Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Send and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Let me start off by giving a shout out and a thank you to the Revelator for coming through on the Cash App, and also to S Jock for coming through frequently, and to D Smith for coming through generously. When I uploaded what I first did about Brittany Renner and her conversion, I didn't want to be unfair to her, and I also don't want to be unfair to those who are already Muslim and have been Muslim for a while and have been disciplined for a while and have been walking the walk for a while. But I'm not going to pull punches either. I'm a bit of an elitist and a bit of a snob when it comes to not only my race, but also my religious community within the race. We're not a dumping ground for broken lives. We are not Christians and we are not Jews. The ability to get along with them does not mean that we are not supposed to be distinct. We are supposed to be distinct. If these are different religions, they're to have distinctions from each other by which we tell them apart. We already know the commonalities. We hear a lot about that. We must also know the distinctions. I am aware that there is a verse, I think in one of the books that James wrote, in the New Testament, in which a lady was caught cheating on her husband, and they were going to stone her. And the Messiah, peace be to him, picked up his stone and said, "He who was without sin cast the first stone." And so they chose not to do it, and they left. And he told her to go back to her husband and not sin anymore. That was what his people needed at that time. But by the same token, because you see, if the husband cheated on his wife, would they have stoned the husband? No. Now, if the husband had other wives and concubines, there's no question. There's no reason to stone him. But if the husband just cheated on his wife, would they stone him if they caught him? No. Therefore, them being ready to stone her did show a bit of a hypocrisy in them. The Messiah was sent to his people at a time when they were really some low-life hypocrites, a nation of low-life hypocrites that pretty much deserved to be colonized. And they were not being colonized by people that were more righteous than them. They were being colonized by people that didn't even see God as being one deity. They were colonized by idol-worshiping Romans. And when I say idle, I'm not saying IDLE as in not active, not busy. I'm not talking about the adjective for lazy or inactive. I'm talking about the noun IDOL, which means a visual, generally three-dimensional representation or image of what a worshiper believes to be a god. And so these filthy, swine-eating, booty bandits from Rome went in and colonized them. And this happened before the birth of the Messiah. And he was telling his people to get it right and get it in order. Forget asking God's help for anything. Yeah, the Romans were nasty, filthy, stank, funky. Guess what? God abandoned you to them or to be ruled by them as a punishment because of what you yourselves are doing. He called the priesthood a pit of vipers. He kicked tables over and swung a sword because they were using the temple for money changing when they were not supposed to be doing this according to their own laws. This is the context in which Jesus stood in front of his people and said, okay, if you're going to stone her, let's start with those of you that didn't do it. See, the difference was these men were doing the same thing, but they caught her doing it. So they were going to stone her while these men, it wasn't necessarily a crowd of women that were about to stone her. More than likely a crowd of women and men. But now we have another revelation, and we Muslims ought to follow that. And many non-Muslim men are beginning to say we might need to have a rule similar to the rule that I'm about to tell you all about. In Surah Nur, verse 26, Allah tells us that good men and good women are for each other. The fornicator is supposed to be with the fornicator. The adulterer with the adulteress, but good men and good women are to be matched up. And this is one of the things that I will hand credit to Arabs for. When they do try to matchmake, they try to match up good people with good people. Generally speaking, seriously practicing Muslims, even when they're not Arabs, will try to match up good people with good people. It's hard to really know somebody's personal business. But for the most part, if a man is not out there running them streets wild, they try to match him up with a lady who probably could not have run them streets wild. They look to match him up with women who generally spent her time with her family. That's what they're looking to do. So that good women can marry good men. What we have in the West right now is a situation in which otherwise good women only want bad men, which means that they ain't good. Not when it comes to that. They will be good in everything in their lives except that. When it comes to the men, they want bad man, rude boy. They want dirty dick. We're talking virgin women that don't want virgin men. That means they don't have a concept of male chastity. We've already seen what happens when you take what Jesus did in that context and then apply it to the context of today. We've already seen what has happened. The people are not rightly matched up together with each other. The women and the men are not rightly matched up. We see what it is that goes on. The women and the men, pretty much you get these few men that all the women want to smash, and they're out there with abnormally high body counts. And the women also have high body counts. And then most of the men can either stay by themselves all the time unnaturally, or they can settle for a woman with a body count higher than his. And then she'll cheat on him when she gets the chance with the same dudes with whom she got these high body counts to begin with. And that's why it is that for a few men, sex seems to be just so cheap. It's like water or sand even. It's just everywhere. And then for most men, sex is very difficult. It's a very difficult to attain type of experience. And if you do, then there has to be something that really messes up the quality of it. She got to be big, or she got to be funky, or something. Something's got to really be wrong with her if you can lay down with her. That's why you got this real serious disparity in between men's perceptions of what sex is like, let alone a relationship, a marriage. And this is the context in which Brittany Renner has become one of the thoughts, famous ones. She just one that was on Instagram and got to smash a bunch of celebrities. Then she accepts. And what I don't want is for the Muslim community, especially the African American Muslim community, or the African Muslim communities for that matter, to be a dumping ground for broken lives and broken genitals. That's what I'm not looking for. So to the Big Cheese YouTube user, my questioning was not meant out of hatred, but it was to ask, what is in it for these men who marry these women, let's say in the NOI, as you mentioned, these men who marry these women that were out in the world and had high body counts, what are these men getting? You said good wives and mothers. If these men don't have high body counts, can they get good wives and mothers that don't have high body counts? Because those women are bound to be better wives and mothers. We already have stats that show that they're better wives. They're more likely to stay with a husband. These women get into body counts of, I think it's 5, start getting into body counts of 5, and they lose their ability to pair bond. They can't like anybody anymore. They don't want them. They don't, get away. They'll leave a man for anything. It's funny because it doesn't really take much of anything for women to leave a man. All she has to do is get a body count of more than 5. Well, that's easy for them to do. It's too easy. Let them have an education. Well, there are grants and scholarships just for women, so they get an education, and then the chances of them leaving a man go up to 90%. Leaving a husband go up to 90%, not because of anything other than she's educated. An education is not even supposed to be a bad thing for a man or a woman to have, but this means that women in the West will take education and make it a bad thing for them to have. That's what this means. That's what this tells you. So I look at these women nowadays. And I see them go through these cycles. I see what it is that they say. They don't, they just, they don't have much respect for many men. They can't even see men as really being any sort of valuable human beings. And that's how Brittany Renner sees men. They're all to be used. We are all to be used. And so when she comes in, I admit that there's a part of me that does not resent that somebody accepted. It's the truth. I expect them to accept it. There's a part of me that resents when anyone, man or woman, cannot accept the truth until they have broken themselves chasing lies. And this is why it is that I told you all what I told you. What does it mean to you that she converts? What does it mean to us in general that she converts? Well, her reason for converting is going to be what really determines her sincerity in the first place. Her sincerity will determine her staying power. Her staying power will determine what she's able to achieve in not only this life here, but in the next life to come. But by the same token, now the phone is on turbocharge. Excellent. But by the same token, is she capable of making equally as wise and as smart a decision when she does not have a broken life by her own standards from chasing lies? See, The question is, if she hadn't spent all this time chasing Instagram thought dreams, if she hadn't gone through all of this and gotten to a point where she herself feels that her life is broken, would she have accepted the truth because it's the truth? Now, there we can say the answer is no. See, I can't tell you that she's going to be a hypocrite, but what I can tell you is that I do know right now she would not have accepted the truth if her life wasn't broken, because she didn't accept it until her life was broken. And she's not the only one like that. She's the famous example. Others, there are many people in the African American community who accept it, but they only accept the truth because they have broken their lives chasing falsehood. And you can still see the effects of it on them. There are people who take it as a fad, and you get sick and tired of seeing that. Even if they really do accept that it is true and they're not hypocrites because of that, they still take it as a fad and a style. Kevin Gates, yeah, I'm saying it. Stop playing with this. What I was trying to say in part one was to all of us, I was trying to politely tell all of us that are African descent at all, be it continental, Caribbean, or North or South American of African descent. I've been trying to say to all of us, when we start looking into Islam, look into it because of what it is, not because of what your life is not. That's what I keep saying to us. I was trying to politely tell us that. Let's stop being niggas. Because Islam ain't for niggas. It is for black folks. It is for people in general, but it ain't for niggas. Now, it comes with a command and an understanding. If you're going to accept it, you're going to de-niggerize yourself. Absolutely. But that's the point. You got to de-niggerize. Malcolm X had to do it. And he did that before he even became a Muslim. He took that command seriously. I took it seriously. I'm not going to sit up and say that I'm a good or a bad Muslim. I'm a serious one. I'm good and bad at different times, I'm pretty sure. I'm really sure about times I'm bad. But one thing even I, as bad as I can be, took seriously was that you don't treat this like a dumping ground for your failures. And unfortunately, a lot of us do exactly that. A lot of us already have a preconceived notion before we even take it seriously. We have a preconceived notion that if our life becomes jacked up enough, then we'll accept Islam. If we're in prison for long enough, then we'll accept it. If we're homeless for long enough, then we'll accept it. If we're down and out in some way, form, or fashion, down bad enough for long enough, then we'll accept it. Many of us have this preconceived notion in our head. We would not consider accepting it, even if we're convinced of its truth, if our lives are okay. And that's the type of people you don't want to be. That's a psychology that you don't want to have. That's when there's a fine line in between understanding the redemptive power of God and treating God and his revelation as a dumping ground for your failure so that you don't have to deal with the accountability and the consequences of your intentional failures. There's a thin line between treating redemption or the chance at redemption, treating mercy as a chance at redemption, and taking advantage of it as if it is an approval for you to screw up intentionally, knowingly. There's a fine line between them two. And we always cross that. And that's what this is an example of when Brittany Renner accepted. Even if she's sincere in trying to redeem herself, this is a flaw in her understanding, but she's not by herself. I didn't single her out to say that because it wasn't just her, it is us. That is a mindset we tend to have, men and women alike. Black folk tend to have that idea. Many take this into the church too. I saw it when I was a kid, before I became Muslim, and I noticed it. I was aware of that, and I got sick of it. I see it now amongst the Muslims, and I've been seeing it since I became one. I saw it in Atlanta. And I got sick of it. Rightly so. I've been sick and tired of it. In Atlanta, I get sick and tired of seeing it amongst the African American Muslims in Atlanta because they will not stop with the effery, with the shuck fit. There are many of them who only share their faith in prisons and county jails and ghettos and projects, nowhere else. There are many who really believe that you ain't supposed to have a conversion story without prison being involved somewhere in there. Yeah, there are people that don't believe that. There were some people that asked me my conversion story, and they looked a little bit shocked when it didn't involve prison. When they realized that college had more to do, that Morehouse had more to do with me accepting Islam than any correctional institution, there was a look of surprise. Now, nobody ever was mean to me and got in my face about it and told me I'm not a real Muslim because I never got arrested. Nobody did that. Nobody said that. No one said, well, you ain't missing any teeth and you don't have any tattoos, so you ain't no real Muslim. Nobody ever said anything like that, but there was still a bit of a shock or that excessive blinking that people get when they think they missed something. There are people who only understand black folks accepting Islam when your life is jacked up, down and out, last resort. And what I'm saying is that's not what the F we are. That's not what God is. That's not what God's revelation is. And that's not what the community of those who actually worship God are to be. The community of his worshipers are not this. Some of you are considering accepting. A lot of you brothers in the audience have thought about it. And a few of you, a handful, are considering, and even a smaller number of you have actually already accepted. And you did not wait until your lives were jacked up to do it. And that's what separates you from the masses. Some of you are considering it, and it's not because your life is jacked up. You're looking at what is right and what is wrong in your life, but you're still questioning what could be more right, what could be better before it gets really bad. That's smart. Some of you have your lives really in order, and you would like to know how you can keep them in order. Who do you turn to ask for help to keep things going well when they are? That's pretty smart. That's thinking ahead. That's not what we see, though, en masse. And when I said that this is a solution for our people, much of that solution is in prevention. And I want this to be understood and remembered. If you are considering, if you are African American or continental African or Caribbean or South American of African origin or Central American of African origin, and you are considering, if you are really of any ethnicity, any race, any DNA sequence, and any cultural and linguistical identity that could come with it, and you were considering this, consider what I'm about to tell you now along with that. Most of the solution power of this faith is in prevention before it even becomes a problem. The problems that you will have in your life as a Muslim are the problems that either you had from before that are permanent or that will happen to anybody in their life in this world because it's this world. Those are the problems you're left with. But notice the first thing that I said. The first thing I said is that they could be problems that were in your life before you became Muslim, and then they're permanent. Some of these things are going to follow you. The longer you wait and the lower you got to go in life before you can decide that you're going to accept the solution, and the medicine will determine the extent to which your life can get even. They will limit the extent to which your life can get better when you finally accept. That's the proof. If you're sitting up and you're thinking, well, I got to get some fornication out my system before I can accept what I already believe to be true, guess what? You're going to have permanent consequences because God will not be mocked. If you're saying, well, I got to get some drinking and partying out my system before I can accept, guess what's going to happen? God ain't going to be mocked. Not by you, not by me, not by Brittany Renner, and not by the non-famous examples of Brittany Renner, whose names are just not known by all and sundry. Not by any OnlyFans model that is thinking, well, I'm going to get this out my system and then I'll put a hijab on and accept the truth and start saying things in Arabic while I'm speaking English. God ain't going to be mocked by them either. This is not a joke. And unfortunately, many of us, while intuitively understanding that God is not a joke, and that therefore no revelation revealed or on the basis of a book is a joke either, we still somehow subconsciously operate on the notion that because God is forgiving, he is a joke. And that's a dangerous line to cross. Now, Brittany crosses that line, you'll know it over time. If she does not, you will know it over time. And I will give her credit wherever I see it. And I will cast blame on whatever I can openly see about her that is wrong. If it's open, I'm going to say something about it once I find out, good or bad. It's not really about her per se as much as it is the pattern of which she is a part. But understand that in all instances, God will not be mocked. He will not be made a fool of. He's far above what we can even understand about him. This is not a costume party. When I was in the U.S. and I was visiting, and I flew my younger daughter in to where I visit my parents. She lives in another part of the country with her mom. And when she came off the plane and gave me that big old bear hug, she had on a hijab, the khimar, dressing modestly, all of that. But when I was joking around with her and I tickled her, and she started saying, la, 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 khalas, I stopped and I said, hold up. I'm an Arabic speaker. Are you learning Arabic? She wasn't taking an Arabic class. I stopped her right then and I said, if you want to practice Arabic with me, then that is fine and it will use Arabic at that point. But if we're just speaking English like normal, you're not just going to throw Arabic around like that. Not because I think it's a holy language per se, but because she ain't Arab. We don't put on affectations and put on airs like that. We're not supposed to, I should say. That's how serious I take it. We don't imitate other groups of people to whom we don't belong just because we share religion with them. We can learn from them. We do not imitate them. That's what we're doing. That's how we get down. I even said to her later on, look, I told her, listen, if you want to say certain things to your grandparents, you can. You just got to say them in English. They don't even know what you mean. If you say astaghfirullah, they don't know what that means. You got to say it in English. You got to say, I seek his forgiveness. Okay, now they know what you mean. This is not a costume party. We're not putting on airs, affectations, imitating other groups of people. We're not doing that. They don't imitate us even when we're right and they're wrong. They don't do it. So that's not what this is. This is not about just image and a costume. It's not about that. This is about a deep inside change. It is not to be played with. And that's why I recorded what I recorded and said what I said about Brittany Renner, really, and then referred you to the other examples that are like her, whose names you don't know, who are not famous. There is a pattern that is going on, and I want that pattern to stop, to end. It's sending the wrong message even to a lot of younger people. Hell, this pattern was a pattern by the time Brittany was even born, to be honest with you. Brittany probably just never had anybody sit her down and tell her what it does not mean. They may have sat her down and said some things about what it means, but they probably never sat her down and told her what it does not mean if you're going to accept this truth. We are not a dumping ground for failure. We are not like that merchandise at that store, that beauty supply store in Clayton County next to Atlanta, where the owner merely died. And so, therefore, the inventory was thrown out as the eviction notice was served. But they couldn't just give the stuff away. But the way that people swarmed around like vultures. Now, for one, of course, that's going to make the news because it's going to depict our people in a negative light. But what I'm saying about this revelation is that this solution I have told to black folks is that we are not like that merchandise. You don't just wait until, okay, now it's free and then you swarm around once it's free to swoop in and start grabbing what you want. It's not like that. This is not like that. And I don't want to see us treated like that. This is more like a regimen. You take it completely. You will be better at some parts than at others. We all will. We will be worse at some parts than at others. We all will. But you accept that it is correct completely from its top to its bottom. We don't play around with this. And not only that, but if you have made bad decisions from before, and now you decide that you want to be Muslim, it does not mean that it is a responsibility of the community to come and bail you out of the cost of the decisions that you made from beforehand. It does not mean that. Big Cheese, you said something about how Brittany's desperate for marriage. And later on, you started to say, you seem to promote that. The problem is, if she's desperate for marriage, she needed to make better decisions from before. She's desperate for marriage. She needs to grow up. She needs to mature. And that's not going to happen overnight. And if no one tells her this and sits her down and tells her this as she studies, if this does not happen and she does not go through that process, then she will remain the same immature child that she has been, only now she'll be Muslim with a khimar on and she'll be like some of these ghetto fabulous sisters in big cities in the United States. They're Muslim, but they cuss like sailors. They fight, they fuss, they threaten people. They only want guys that have guns under the seats. That same thing. Philadelphia is an example of that. The Muslims in Philadelphia are known for being ghetto fabulous. All the other Muslims, African American Muslims now, in all the other cities, look at Philadelphia Muslims as an example of what not to do, what not to be, how not to behave. When you find Muslims from Philadelphia that are serious and they walk the walk, they have to suffer because of this bad reputation that the others have. Sometimes it ain't even Muslims that do something in particular, but the Muslims wind up being blamed for it because of what it is that people have seen the Muslims do. You got Muslim gangs and they're shooting at each other and killing each other. And they'll sit up and talk in English about what they'll do afterwards. Yeah, I'm going to go home, do a hustle, man, perform a wudu and pray some rakah because I just caught some bodies. And you be looking at them like, you dummy. You're not supposed to confess that you killed somebody. But now look at you. You said like next week you're going to do it again. You're not talking about a sin that doesn't have a victim. You're talking about a sin that has real victims. And you just downplaying it. And that's what you see. If Brittany does not go through a process, she's going to be exactly like them. And what winds up happening a lot of times is that many who stay on the slippery slopes long enough wind up like Rhoda Usman, claiming to be Muslim, but they have actually secretly given it up for something else like witchcraft. And then before you know it, they're completely wilding the F out, but they go to the Muslim community to get help, even though secretly they gave up Islam a long time ago. And then turn around and practice witchcraft later on again to get what they want. That's what you wind up seeing. I wish you didn't, but it winds up being the case. I mean, Rhoda came from Muslim parents, but she was a single mom. No record of her being married, just single mom. What does that mean? It means she fornicated. So she's supposedly lesbian, always trying to tell guys what they can't get from her. But then some dude got the cheeks, clapped it, nutted in her, didn't have to pull out nothing. Now she a single mom. What's Brandon Jamal when you need him? No insults to Brandon Jamal, but you get what I'm saying. Now she's a single mom. Now she's a single mom. She says she's going to have his kid. Don't care if he's here or not. Now she a single mom. Now she a single mom. And she practicing witchcraft and lying on dudes, making up crimes to report so she can get more money. There was a time when she was Muslim, just not that good at it. It's a slippery slope. And that's what I don't want to see more of us going into. And so now the only thing I can tell you all is that since this example is now famous, which is Brittany Renner, only thing I can really do is tell you men, listen, those of you that are in my audience, at least, listen, you ain't like the knuckleheads that only wait until their lives are completely jacked up to accept what might be true, what I'm sure is true, but to accept it based on its merits. You're not like that. So since many of you, shouts out to like Israeli Young Lion and others like him that have accepted. Red Lion, Assalamu alaikum to you, brothers. Some of you who were born to Muslim parents, like Abdullah. Darius, shouts out to you guys. Look, I'm going to say this. For you guys, y'all got a lot that y'all got to deal with. And when you decide that you're going to try to build family and build a lineage that can take on your legacy, but you're in the United States, your options are limited, partially because of this. You understand, many of you have an easy time understanding that Islam is not just a dumping ground that you go to, a last option, when you done messed your life up and trashed it. Y'all understand that. A lot of men don't understand it, but when I say it, it sinks in with you pretty easily. It doesn't take forever and a whole lot of trial and a whole lot of argument for you to get the idea and the concept. Some of you might even say, you know what, thank you for that reminder before it gets that far, before I let it get that far. You can't tell that to these sisters. A lot of these sisters that you're going to see that are going to be available for marriage in the United States will not have accepted it until that point, and some who were born into it are still going to mess their lives up. Born and raised in it, and they're going to jack their lives up, and then they're going to make themselves available for you to come along and marry so that you can pick up the pieces. Be a stepdad. You think Brittany wants a man that has kids of his own? Honestly, you think that's what she's looking for? No. But it was a Christian woman that told us that women cannot respect men who become stepdads before they become dads. They're just not always aware of it. So can Brittany find someone that she respects? Probably not. She can't respect somebody that she could find. And Big Cheese, this is part of what it is that I was getting at. She done messed certain things up. She might need to be alone for the rest of her life. Or she has to settle, and that's not something she needs. That's not something that she can escape just because now she put on a hijab and starts saying inshallah. Even if she seriously walks the walk and prays 10 or 20 times a day, can she sit up and get exactly what it is that she would have gotten had she not gone through that 304 phase to begin with? And she walks that walk and talks that talk. She's still going to be lucky if she finds a man with a higher body count than her that went through life the same way that she did before he became Muslim. And most men don't rack up high body counts. And men who do rack up high body counts and then they become Muslim don't marry monogamously, but rather polygynously. You're gonna have to share them openly. And that's what it's gonna be. And that's she's probably gonna refuse that. She don't want a man that other women don't want, but she doesn't want to share that man. She now has less of a chance of finding that than an unknown woman would. And Big Cheese, we got to accept that. She's going to have to accept that. This revelation now supersedes and it updates and abrogates the previous revelations that came before it. So we believe that the prophets were prophets. We do believe that. The Messiah, peace be to him, was a prophet, the last one before Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We believe that. But when he sat up and picked up a rock and said, he who was without sin cast the first stone, and nobody chose to do it, we got to understand that that does not mean that in today's time, you sit up and give these women a free pass to go and be thoughts and 304s, and then later on decide that they're going to come along and have a religious conversion, and now a religious man is obligated to come and take care of them and their kids. No. What's in it for these men to accept this? That question still has to be answered, and that was answered in the last revelation. Good women are for good men. So for men who have not gone around and done these things that she has done, who don't have a 35 and 36 and 37 body count, who weren't smashing Instagram models and thoughts and OnlyFans. These guys who weren't doing that, and that's most of them, ironically, should not be wifing up women like her, even after she's had a religious conversion. Men who have done what she has done and then had religious conversions like she has had that are in the same boat as her are the ones that are suitable for her. The thing is that because most men cannot do that, cannot go through that, that just means her pool's limited. And that's what it's supposed to be. And ain't nothing wrong with that. And if she's really going to mature as a person, let alone as a Muslim, she will accept that as a natural consequence of her choices. Just like all the other women who accept and go through a spiritual conversion after 3 or 4 phase have to wind up accepting. It's the same thing for them. I hope that this benefits and explains it better than the other part 1 by itself. As always, thank you all for listening. Black Heart, Black Mind, Blackout. Assalamu alaikum and black, heterosexual, non-select male power because they don't like it. And black patriarchy and consequences until extinction of Judgment Day. Appreciate you all flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase Jet Black is also a verb. I invite you all to go to Buy Me a Coffee and check out the business and first class sections of Jet Black Airways as well. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.